Welcome, gamers. Welcome to my very first video essay. So be nice. I've been playing games since I was but a wee lass, but I've never made a video that recorded down all my thoughts. Is it even legal for women to have thoughts anymore? I wish someone would just think for me. Where are all the wrinkly-brained men? So buckle up, pour your favorite bevy, and get ready for a bumpy ride into capitalism, cannibalism, and catharsis. For fans of the horror genre, walking sims have been a talking point regarding their fear factor. Even the scariest among them can have their freaky bits compartmentalized in an I just need to keep moving type of way. Mouthwashing, while similar in gameplay to others of the genre, has an extremely enveloping story, with a simple cast of engrossing characters that we get to know on an all too real level. It crawled under my skin and I couldn't stop thinking about it for weeks after playing. When Mouthwashing debuted in September of 2024, I had a backlog of horror games to play. You see, I love all things horror, especially weird horror, and I wish-listed it for later and moved on. Happy, blissful, none the wiser.
That's the heartbreaking part. You're so blissfully unaware.
Until the online communities I frequented became more and more mouthwashing related. Jimbo this and Curly that. I was intrigued, but the number one thing I heard echoed was to avoid all spoilers and to go in blind. To really immerse yourself in the story. So I did. I fired it up and streamed my blind playthrough to my Twitch community as we spent the next 4 hours in heartbreaking, blood-curdling anguish amidst unraveling the twisted events that took place upon the Tulpar. Gameplay pops between various chronological points of interest in the timeline, both leading up to and after the crash. Like I mentioned before, after beating the game the first time I was stunned. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen, and I decided that I needed to create this video. If you care about spoilers, I would stop this video now and watch another video of the gameplay, or even play the game yourself, since we lay out the events as they happen chronologically, instead of the order that the game has you play in. You don't need to have played the game before, though, to understand the story as we unwrap it, but it might ruin it for you if you decide down the road to play it, and I don't want to deprive anybody of that magic. I spent a few hours playing through the game again, after a weekend of feeling empty. I'm serious, this game got to me. I spliced together each part of the story to better understand the intricate moving pieces involved. So without farther ado, mouthwashing. "7 days before the crash is the earliest that we see, with more than 8 months left to go on the trip. It's much calmer than the beginning of the game as you play it, which starts right at the impact itself. During Captain Curly's psychiatric evaluation with Anya, who's the nurse in charge aboard the long-haul freighter, she mentions needing to do one more check-in with another crew member named Jimmy, who she does not want to interview. She tells Curly it's because Jimmy doesn't take it seriously and talks about fantasies of sex with horses. Of course, we know why she's really avoidant. Curly does as well, which is why he offers to do the eval for her. You see, Jimmy had assaulted Anya some unspecified time before this. As we piece together the story, this is an integral frame to view it through, as during the game it isn't revealed until much later. The existential dread that something bad happened is what makes this game so gripping. Curly goes to help Swansea, the resident old-timer with mechanical prowess, and his intern, Daisuke, a last-minute addition to the 5-person crew making this trek, a jovial spirit without too much practical use. As he finds Jimmy, they head towards the cockpit to do the psychiatric evaluation. The first dream sequence happens on the way back to the cockpit, as something seems a little wrong. We wade through more blood than a modern Saw movie and see ladders and warning signs blaring before the sun comes up. Seemingly meaningless, meant for creepy vibe, this symbolic surrealism actually makes more sense when we better understand the recurring themes that Jimmy and Curly discuss moments after. We learn a few things in the psyche eval. Off the record, Jimmy's doing well, enjoying being in control as co-pilot and Curly's longtime friend. Jimmy also probes into Curly, asking why he always seems at the edge of a cliff with his feet in cement. Curly wonders if his life could be different, and Jimmy seems envious of him. Jim laments Curly's struggle to decide what to do, describing it akin to being on the top rung of a ladder, only to wonder if you were on the wrong ladder altogether. Meanwhile, Jimmy is left climbing, leaving people that he's used on the rungs below him. The exchange is interrupted by the news from the Pony Express's corporate headquarters as the sequence ends. The very next day, Curly breaks the news to the staff, despite headquarters' recommendations to wait until the destination was closer. He wasn't planning to, but something about an impromptu speech at an allocated communal birthday party got him in the mood to deliver the horrible news. This will be the last job that they do. The company is going under. Jimmy takes the news noticeably worse than the others, verbally attacking Curly, who he knows from the day before was already thinking about switching careers. But for the rest of them, they have nothing else to look forward to. Jimmy especially. A few days later, 2 days before the crash, we get a scene that, I think, sums the game's themes up better than anything else does. This scene is just so heart-wrenching. Curly and Anya are sitting in the common room at night, looking at the fake night sky on the large screen. Anya mentions to Curly how the night sky is peaceful, and if you look really closely, you can see a single dead pixel in the screen. Curly doesn't see it, but he thinks that it doesn't ruin the illusion. Just because 99.9% of them work, it's easy to forget the one bad one. He's more of a big picture guy. Captain Curly, decorated leader and all-around quote-unquote good guy, has the privilege to turn a blind eye to the rotten apple in the bunch. Anya, victim, visited by a man on the crew who she is forced to spend nearly the next year with, doesn't have that luxury. She can't not see the dead pixel, because the 0.01% is there. The easily overlooked problem for Curly permanently marred another of his crew. Curly's privilege is even more apparent, as Anya asks about the lack of the locks on the sleeping quarters but not the cockpit. Curly, without even realizing how ignorant he truly is, says, "Ironic, isn't it?" The next morning, 1 day before the crash, Curly must go find his missing gun. In the cockpit, we find Anya, cowering. Curly tries to be comforting. Really, everything he's saying is blaming her, implying she's unstable, since as a nurse she doesn't get psyche evals. To saying, if there was anything he could have done, he would have. There was a myriad of times he could have intervened, from having Swansea put locks on the sleeping quarters, to reprimanding Jimmy instead of playing both sides. Curly is the pinnacle of not understanding intent versus impact. Anya finally reveals the huge news. She's pregnant. The evidence manifest of Jimmy's actions. With 8 months left to go on the voyage, this is no longer something that Curly, Anya, nor Jimmy can sweep under the rug. Her fears of what Jimmy will do when he finds out is what prompts her to hide the gun, taking responsibility for herself and her safety, something more than the lip service that Curly offers. The day of the crash is the moment we start the game. Although near the end of the game we return to the day of the crash for much more insight, in an oh shit moment that sunk its teeth into me. At the beginning of the day, Anya tells Curly that she told Jimmy the news of the pregnancy. Our captain runs to find him in the halls by the utility room. Jimmy fears for what consequences he'll face for his actions when they get home. Curly, desperate to fix this, tries to do his captainly duties and console this monster, implying that they've gotten through this before. I don't know what shady shit Jimmy has done before, but you could bet that Curly has passively enabled it for a long time, both as his friend and charismatic leader. This reinforces the idea of this culture of inaction, this bystander effect, something that those in leadership can't afford to have. Or bad shit happens. Jimmy considers his options, and even puts out the idea that they could purposely crash land and kill themselves, being remembered as heroes instead of the captain that let it happen under his watch. Yes, that is Curly. Yes, he is kinda maybe hot in a youth pastor sense, but that doesn't excuse his inaction. I also believe he knows what Jimmy is doing here. I mean, he stated it out loud like 2 seconds ago. We then get a glimpse inside the cockpit, the first scene of the game. We assume this is Curly, and are only given the options to veer into the asteroid instead of away from it. I originally thought I messed up when I played it for the first time, and I thought I could avoid the asteroid altogether. I was so wrong. But also so right. All of this was avoidable. A bigger mess to hide the evidence of the previous mess Jimmy had made. Much later in the game, we see the immediate aftermath. Amidst system failure, we sprint to the cockpit to find Jimmy, curled by the wall of the cockpit door. Curly begs Jim to tell him that he didn't do what Curly thought he did. I believe Curly knew deep down what Jim would do, but again, lacked the will to act, to truly take responsibility. After the crash, we're thrust 2 months into the ordeal, a beat-up tulpar slowly drifting towards its final destination. Emergency foam sealing the space between the crew and the cold, cruel death beyond. Now, we experience the world through Jimmy's perspective. Anya asks us to help Curly take his meds. He survived the impact, for better or worse. But the screams are too much for Anya to deal with. I mean, seriously, I feel bad for Curly. But even a house couldn't prepare me for the worst bedside manners I've ever seen. After we give Curly his meds, we go outside to find Anya in the common room, lying on the ground, wondering why Curly did this. She makes a point to mention that she doesn't believe our worst moments define us. Another sentiment repeated throughout this story. As we are, dying on a ship losing power, with a steadily depleted amount of food and water, someone realizes that, wait, we're a cargo ship. Maybe we carry something like food, or medicine, or water, life-changing supplies. The titular item of the game, mouthwash. Cases and cases as far as the eye can see. They have a decent amount of alcohol in them, but too much sugar for medicinal purposes. The bleakness of the situation causes Swansea to break his 15 years of sobriety, and the crew of the Tulpar are perhaps worse off than before. A month later, we're awoken to Curly's screams of pain. as we search for Anya to see if his meds have been taken yet. We discover her talking with Swansea in the foamed-over cockpit. Jimmy, paranoid about what they could have been talking about, asks why she's crying. She hasn't done Curly's meds yet, and a frustrated Jimmy snaps at her before going to give Curly his meds. Again. Far more violently than the first time. Like, seriously, folks, this made me squirm. Jimmy is taking his frustration out on his old friend, the person that enables his actions, currently a vulnerable punching bag. Meds are in short supply. Curly's pain is keeping them up at night. The crew thinks that he crashed the ship. It's easy for Jimmy to project his guilt onto Curly to alleviate those feelings. Four months after the crash, everyone is feeling it. We jump scare Anya as Jimmy sees her holding a bottle of mouthwash, contemplating drinking it. But ultimately deciding that it wouldn't fix her problems. She mentions more meds encased in some emergency foam that they might be able to carefully pry out with a fire axe that Swansea is currently getting groovy with. Seriously, he loves that thing. It's implied that Anya told him about Jimmy assaulting her that night that we saw her talking with him in the cockpit. And Swansea, an old cantankerous drunk, has no problems letting Jimmy know just how much he doesn't respect him. Swansea is coming to terms with his life choices. After we free the last of the meds from the foam, Anya once again asks Jimmy to give Curly his meds, which he seems fine with. I mean, after all, a captain takes responsibility, right? As we get the meds and go give them to Curly, Jimmy shares his feelings. He didn't understand the pressure that Curly was under as captain, and wants to believe what Curly has said about our worst moments not making us monsters, not defining us. Our intention is greater than our impact. Or so Jimmy believes. A month later, Daisuke comes up to us worried. Anya is trapped in the medical bay. Upon investigation, we realize that she isn't stuck, but rather she's locked herself in there. Anya tells Jimmy that he was right, that she should have done this from the beginning. That she wanted to believe that our worst moments didn't define us, but that this wasn't our worst moment. That this is the best decision that she'll ever make. The only other way in? The vent in the utility room that Swansea has been dutifully guarding since the crash. Jimmy can't convince Swansea to let them in, so he believes that drugging him with a cocktail of mouthwash and the last bit of isopropyl from the medical supplies we found is the best way forward. It seems like Jimmy has experience in spiking drinks. Just saying. Just saying, if this polygonal ass was next to me at a bar, I would leave with one hand on my taser. Once we are in the utility room, we realize that despite what Swansea said about the foam blocking off the room and the room being unsafe, it's actually quite fine. Not only that, but a cryogenic pod remained intact. Essentially a lifeline for one person aboard the dilapidated vessel. Jimmy is pissed and thinks Swansea is saving it for himself. He convinces Daisuke to go into the fence that Swansea previously deemed super unsafe to get into the locked medical and find Anya. Daisuke wants to wait for Swansea to wake up, as he still trusts and respects him. Jimmy, knowing this, uses that desire for respect as leverage against Daisuke, a master manipulator at work. A collapse in the vent causes Daisuke to suffer from grave injuries. He manages to make his way to medical before discovering Anya, who is making the best decision she's ever made. Jimmy believes it to be killing Curly, putting him out of his misery until we see what lay waiting in the medical bay. Anya, overdosed on Curly's last pain meds, had taken her own life and that of her unborn child. Eight hours before judgment, we're greeted with a direly injured Daisuke, the aftermath of the collapsing vent. We rush to go get some sort of disinfectant, meandering through a bizarre nightmare dream to acquire more mouthwash. Since we used the last of the medical disinfectant to drug Swansea, this will have to do. But it can only work for so long. Two hours later, Daisuke is worse for the wear, and Swansea decides to take action. Comforting Daisuke in his last moments, wishing things were different, that he could have put Daisuke in the cryopod to spare him from the rest of this. Kindness, before putting him out of his misery. Jimmy still refuses to take any accountability for his role in getting the kid killed. Swansea and Jimmy, now the only two functioning crew left, are at odds, tempers boiling over. Swansea, who's been snidely calling Jimmy captain for a while at this point, says that a captain should go down with his ship, but that it doesn't matter now, and Jimmy can take the last cryopod if he wants. That way he can survive and tell whatever story he would like. We go to get the gun, and it begins a sequence of trippy little dreams. I tried to line up the exact timelines, but with an unreliable narrator, we have to do our best to piece together the most logical order of things. As we open our inventory for the gun, the screen glitches, and the next instance we see is us, in the cockpit, with Swansea trying to break in with the axe. This leads me to think that we didn't shoot Swansea, and instead ran downstairs from medical to a place that we knew we could lock from the inside, the cockpit. When we check out our inventory, there's a static blob with the text, "My hands are shaking." I believe this is the gun, as this scene takes place before the previous one in the actual playthrough of the game. After Swansea breaks in, we go to a scene with Swansea tied up in the utility room, the next closest place to the cockpit where we can interrogate him about those cryogenic pods. When we take the gun, we transport to a new dream, one in a graveyard where Daisuke's mausoleum lies. I believe this is Jimmy coming to terms with what he is about to do, of who he is, of his refusal to take accountability for his actions. We kill Swansea 3 times to move on. But an interesting achievement is earned if Swansea kills you 10 times in a row. The good ending. I think this is a very important message the developers layered into this game. The good ending is the one where Jimmy dies, where justice was served. Crime's not swept under the rug because it doesn't mess with Curly's big picture ideas. The good ending is earned through facing consequence, which, let me tell you, penance takes a long time. Swansea monologues and presents the juxtaposition to both Jimmy and the player. Both, Swansea and Jimmy, are shitty human beings. Swansea himself admits as much. But after having a vision of himself dying, he turns his life around. He quits the bottle, is a loving husband, father to children, does good work. But he tells Jimmy that all of these achievements, these things that he's strived after, his personal top rung of the ladder, nothing felt as good as he expected it to. His days of being a drunk were better than it all. He would choose the dismal drunkard life with the bottom of the bottle being better than his wife, children, job, and future. But he recognizes that he is a shitty human being and that this is the end game. Unlike Jimmy, who still can't own up to his awfulness, not without martyring himself, he can't accept the fact that his impact makes him a shitty person, regardless of his intention. At 1 hour before judgment, we have a feast. Previously, there's a cutscene that doesn't seem to have any timestamp, but I think it fits here, as it's for sure after Swansea's cracked the screen with the axe. Curly gets existential, living multiple lives. Sometimes they're good, with his wife. Sometimes it's shitty cake with a friend. But it's those moments that help you appreciate the good. We go to get something to cut the cake, in return, to feast.
Happy birthday!
After the events with Swansea, we bring Curly to the table, with the dead bodies of our compatriots surrounding us. Each of their fatal injuries readily apparent. In our psychosis, we cut off parts of Curly's leg to serve to our friends, as well as him. Jimmy says that Curly's lowest rung is others' highest, emphasizing farther the struggle with power that Jimmy grapples with, both in his own life and exerting over others. The whole crew died or is permanently maimed due to his actions, directly or indirectly. Curly in the crash, Daisuke in the vent, Swansea with a gun, and Anya. Poor sweet Anya. In a dream with Pole the horse, soon after, Jimmy plays the victim, despite victimizing so many others in his path to the highest rung on the ladder. Poor you, caged and misunderstood. Jimmy expresses his apology for what he did to Curly, the pain that he put him through, the lack of understanding for how much responsibility the captain has. Him, Curly, a refusal to acknowledge the damage that he's done to Anya. As we come to judgment, we go through the most disgusting puzzle in any horror game I've ever played. I think it represents the pain we put Curly through, especially as we forced him to eat part of himself at the dinner table. Once he finally gets it down, we have a TV show that I don't remember coming on Saturday mornings. In this conversation at the edge of the universe with Jimmy and Curly, we hear Curly recognize that he could have done something, should have done something to stop this. Jimmy, ignorant as ever, says that they can both still be heroes, and apologizes for what he did to Curly. In Jimmy's eyes, still the most egregious mistake he made was perpetrated against Curly. A continued lack of recognition for his own impact. At the end of the dream, we reach the end of the game. The final scene. We carry Curly from the feast table, surrounded by our dead friends, down to the utility room. Jimmy places Curly in the cryogenic capsule. He apologizes once again for hurting him. He was just trying to fix the situation after all. But now, because Curly will survive, because Jimmy doesn't have to suffer the consequence of his horrific actions, he's essentially absolved himself of guilt. He wanders off screen. We hear a gunshot. And afterwards we begin to freeze as the credits roll. Dark, right? Anya's story brought to mind a painting called The Morning Visitor by Dino Bussati, where the depicted woman, after being never quite returns to her shape, permanently changed by the worst moments of another. Anya's never the same, and Jimmy, despite his subconscious slamming him with messages over and over again to take responsibility for his actions, still only recognizes the damage that he's done to Curly, who entertains his horrendous actions and covers for him even if he's ignorant of the effects. So the question comes back to impact versus intention. Do our worst moments define us? And all throughout my searching online, I see Jimmy apologists, which is crazy. But there's a lot of people that defend Curly and his actions, or lack thereof, as well. All throughout this game, we're presented this idea that our worst moments don't define us, that they don't make us monsters. But I think what's also presented in this story is that they do define others, the people stepped on in the quest for the kingdom. The entire crew, the end of their lives is defined by Jimmy's actions. Curly at multiple points could have intervened. In his very light defense, there were outside influences impacting his decisions. His closeness to being done with his career, his proximity and friendship with Jimmy, his desire to not rock the boat. But this is potentiated by the dystopian capitalist rules provided by Pony Express. Throughout the game, we see these posters, and one in particular helps set the tone for why Curly may not have been inclined to have Jimmy apprehended for the remainder of the trip. It farther enables this culture of inaction, of bystander effect, even if there's grave costs, and in this case, the cost of everybody aboard the Tulpar. The big picture of everybody getting paid outweighed the very real dead pixel, the 0.01% of germs that destroyed them from the inside. You see, culture's been both actively and passively propped up for time immemorial. Abusers don't even hide, they just hire a lawyer and slander their victims. They push people lower and lower and lower down the ladder until their blood pools at the bottom. Meanwhile, they climb higher and higher into positions of administration and leadership and management. And those that know say nothing for fear of disturbing the peace or the predisposition towards tenacious friendships. That sentiment that they know him and he isn't like that. And for so many of us girls like Anya, we have to keep doing the day to day despite. And for a lot of us, that day to day gets exhausting. And without proper support, I mean like real support, it leaves you with a weariness that like makes your bones feel hollow and I don't know, like you're hoping humanity fade. Especially now that women's rights, queer rights, minorities' rights are being eroded, and this concept of your body, my choice is on the rise once again, the message of mouthwashing could not be more prevalent. You may know a Jimmy. You may be a Curly. We have to reflect on what sort of space our words and actions create. Is it a space that enables bad behavior? Or are we attempting to rehabilitate, to actively unlearn oppressive worldviews, to shift the passive support of systems that we claim not to uphold into active support of the people who say that these systems hurt them the most? Call out your friends. Call out that stranger. Listen to the people who say that they're hurt. Truly listen. We have to. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to like and subscribe. I love you. Thanks for watching.